Good evening, good morning, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to 4 Women, 4 Decades on Feeling All the Feels. We are 4 women representing 4 decades for those who have not joined us before. And in case Bea and Rebecca refer to one another as mother and daughter, that is because they are. So the 4 of us having a conversation this morning will be myself, Natalie, Bea, and Rebecca. So welcome. This conversation has been a really meaningful one for all of us. We've been doing these talks now, as many of you know, for over a year. And I think navigating what it means to be a human being, continuing to learn from one another, but also continuing to simply learn how we can process what we're feeling and perhaps work together or help one another understand and perhaps start to learn that we are allowed to feel everything that we're feeling when we're feeling it. So in thinking about this conversation tonight, I know that many of us on the call, obviously me included, will sometimes withhold how we're feeling, perhaps bypass how we're feeling, certainly not allow. So many of you, many of my clients, many people I know will say things like, oh, it's just not a good time. I can't feel this way right now. I've got to toughen up, get through, move through, and not really allow ourselves to bathe in that feeling or to really process that feeling that we're having, and that perhaps our feelings are inconvenient in some way, or that maybe we judge our feelings to be both good and bad. So we like the really yummy, shiny ones like happiness and peace and relaxed, and we judge a little bit when it comes to feelings like sadness or grumpiness or anger. And so we've been talking about this, and we continue to talk about this as a 4 to help each other. You know, what am I feeling and how am I feeling it? And then perhaps as a 4, we help one another point to, and what feelings am I judging and why am I judging them, when actually feeling everything is what it means to be a human being. And in the email that came out about this event, we quote Glennon Doyle, who you all know we love, and she says that being human isn't about feeling happy, it's about feeling everything. As a parent, I know that I'm sometimes rushing my children through the emotions that they're feeling. You know, let's get a tissue, wipe the tears, let's move, let's go. We're on a schedule. And actually, I'm hoping our conversation tonight will give us all a bit of an hour off to breathe, to think about it, and to perhaps start to, when we can, feel what we need to feel when we need to feel it. I also thought, in preparation of what I might say, just from my own perspective, sometimes we also don't say what we need when we're feeling feelings that we perhaps judge. So if I'm feeling sad, one of the things I might need to say to one of the other 3 ladies on this call is, I need a hug or I need comfort. And actually, sometimes I find it hard to say that. And I might have internal chatter around that and say to myself something like, oh, come on, Rach, sort yourself out, pour yourself a gin, move on. And actually, the more I spend time with these 4 and with you, and just being a human being, it's actually quite nice to stop judging my feelings as often as I have been, and feeling them fully as they're happening. The one thing I have learned in the last year, and again, we're still learning every day, and we're really on page 1 with all of this stuff as per all of our talks. But the more I look at this subject, one thing I've noticed is that however I'm feeling, it doesn't impact my ability to do what I need to do. And that was a really powerful lesson that I learned probably a couple of years ago now. The ladies will have heard this story. I stood up to introduce myself in a big deal. I'm a facilitator. There was a large number of people in my classroom. And as I stood up to introduce myself to launch the day, I realized it was an important anniversary around the loss of my mother. And in that moment, I felt incredibly overwhelmed, incredibly emotional. And like I just wanted to lie down in a dark room and be alone for a long time. And I was mid-sentence. I was like, hello, I'm Rachel. And in my head just went, oh my gosh, it's today. And so learning that however I'm feeling, even if I have all of these tingly feelings throughout my body, this sadness, this judgment around my feelings, in that moment, it didn't stop me doing what I needed to do. So that's what I wanted to start us off with this evening. Yeah, ladies, over to you.
I really recognise that I used to be judgmental about when I was feeling anything other than positive. And I would seek to analyze why that was the case and kind of not be satisfied with the fact that it was anything other than positive. I think I was brought up where positive mental attitude was reinforced, and um, and that was the aspiration. So there was a lot of kind of meddling when it was anything other to get to positivity. And I think, yeah, it's a bit of that bypassing kind of went on, and analyzing where I probably just didn't need to. Like, I see now that our feelings are just ebbs and flows. And that's entirely normal and entirely natural. And actually, for it to be anything other than that, this kind of illusory goal of it always being on a high, we're just setting ourselves up to fail, because that isn't normal or natural. Like, you just look around at all of nature, and we have, seasons, and we have ebbs and flows, and the same is for our human experience. So now what I see is that if I'm feeling low, I don't need to judge it, and I don't need to unpick it and see where it's coming from. I mean, I might do that, but I equally can just sort of sit with it and know that it'll pass, and there's nothing to be scared of.
And that nothing is wrong with us. I think so often I used to think that there was something wrong with me, or that I was broken in some way when I would feel those low feelings. But actually it's and the reason we quote, and the number of times I quoted that Glennon Doyle quote is unbelievable, but it's just so true. Like, we're constantly being told to cheer up, stop crying, calm down, and some of those things that you said as well, Rach. But actually, if we rewrite that narrative to actually say that everything is welcome, then how can we possibly see ourselves as broken, or think that something is wrong? Like, imagine never judging how you're feeling. I think that has been absolutely transformational for me. I think one of the things that I've seen is that I used to have a lot of high highs and low lows, and I would have all these spikes, and there wasn't really much of the middle, and it was pretty exhausting going from right up here to right down here all the time. And I kind of likened it to, in the past, to, if you imagine like keeping an inflated beach ball under the surface of a swimming pool. Like, if you're not kind of allowing yourself to feel all your feelings all the time, it's a bit like that. It's a bit like trying to keep this stuff down, and eventually, because the ball is slippery, it's going to pop up and smack you in the face. And I kind of felt like that was my experience of my feelings, that I would just become, once they're built up, I would feel so totally overwhelmed, and they would completely wipe me out. I'd have to go to bed for even kind of days on end to recover, because it was exhausting. Whereas now it's much more like that, for me anyway, that it feels like, yes, of course I have high highs and I still have low lows sometimes, but there's something that, as I've been allowing myself to feel as I go, rather than feeling when it all becomes too much, or feeling when it's convenient, or feeling when I've scheduled time for it, I've found that it's so much easier to cope with, like those, what we consider to be the kind of negative emotions. I don't believe there's any such thing as a negative emotion, but those kind of lower feelings that I don't judge them. They don't wipe me out. I bounce back to whatever my kind of average is much more quickly, because it's like there isn't that story around it as well. There isn't this, oh my God, something's wrong with me. How on earth am I ever going to feel different again? All of that stuff. That it feels much more kind of regulated in a way now. I don't know if you guys have felt that before.
Yeah, there's what comes up for me listening to you talk is this radical acceptance, which I've talked about before and done a video on, and something that my favorite mindfulness teacher talks about, Tara Brach. And I used to be terrified of my feelings, absolutely terrified of my feelings. And I suffered, probably in my almost 6 decades, probably about 10 years of that, I suffered with depression. And I think for me, that was about, I was frightened of that as well. I was frightened to feel everything. So that was the ultimate numbing, in a way, depression. And what I you know, and I used to be afraid that if I started crying, I wouldn't stop. So I'd kind of just try and numb it all, not feel it. I remember when Bea and her brothers were little, I'd go around, when I had to do the school run, I'd be wearing sunglasses all the time, whatever the weather, because I didn't want people to see into my eyes. Because I thought if they could see my eyes, they'd know. And because for me, feeling like that wasn't okay. Because we're taught to be happy. You know, where were we taught to be happy all the time? And maybe it starts in childhood, I don't know. I remember being told on numerous occasions, stop crying, rather than you're upset. Should we sit down? What can I do for you? It's hurry, as Bea said, hurrying out of emotions. Oh, those aren't the attractive emotions. So you'd better hurry out of that. You'd better put the lid on that. You'd better not feel that, because that's dangerous. You don't want to go there. I remember somebody I dated, I remember him so clearly. God, it should have been a warning. He said, you'll never see me cry. I'm not emotional. And now when I think of that, it's like, oh, the pressure, as Bea says, the beach ball that's being held underwater to not feel. And our bodies regulate themselves. They know what to do. You know, yeah, I started crying, I stopped. Bea's cried, she stopped. Rachel's cried, Natalie the same. But we get so frightened, and there's this toxic positivity that's out there, that's the kind of the uber end of positive psychology that I find so dangerous, because it's saying, let's put a sticker of a smiley face on it, or let's just be happy, let's just think positive thoughts. But there's a denial there of our human experience, which is multidimensional, technicolored, and surely that's what we're here to feel everything, right? There aren't, as Bea said, there aren't negative and positive. They're just all feelings.
And I can see how innocently we can get into that trap of that toxic positivity, because if we believe there's need to be scared of our feelings, if we see that they're, you know, we're not okay when we're experiencing lows, if that genuinely looks like the case, well, we're going to be fighting them and doing it in whatever way strikes us as logical, given the thinking that we believe we need to be scared. And I think the insight we've all talked about that we've seen is that actually just don't need to be scared of any feeling. Everything's welcome. And actually, they move through us if we allow them to. So we might be scared and thinking that if we let it in, we'll just be swamped and never come out. But like Bea described with that beach ball, you know, our well-being does rise. And I think what I used to do, because I was scared or thought I need to be positive, I would try and technique my way back to positivity, you know, with affirmations or looking in the mirror, or, you know, I don't know, I can't even remember the stuff, but it seemed to make sense, of course, innocently, because I shouldn't be going in a low. And in a way, when you're not scared, you can just be okay with being sad for a while and appreciate where it's coming from. Maybe, you know, is it because there's a loss, or I don't know, it's just, there doesn't need to be this judgment that culture sometimes suggests we ought to have.
That's when we turn to coping strategies, isn't it? When we think when we don't want to go anywhere near that Pandora's box of my feelings, unconsciously we'll turn to coping strategies to numb or distract ourselves from feeling those uncomfortable feelings. And I know that I did that a lot at the time of my eating disorder, that if I was feeling uncomfortable, I would retreat to my comfort zone, which was my eating disorder and those behaviors, because it gave me this kind of temporary distraction or relief, even though an eating disorder is not a comfortable place to be. It's like, in that state of mind, I would have rather done those things than go anywhere near those feelings, which now, obviously, hindsight is a blooming wonderful thing. I can see that there was nothing to be afraid of in the first place. And so, and I mean, coping strategies can take all different forms. Toxic positivity is probably an example of that, really. So we don't want to go near those feelings, so big smiley face, cheer up, move on. Or it could be automatically going to your phone to flick through social media, or drinking, or cleaning the house from top to bottom. Like those things that we kind of automatically turn to distract ourselves. And like my eating disorder, some of them can be really dangerous. So actually understanding that it is okay to experience and feel all of those feelings has been literally life-changing for me. And yeah, this whole idea of fear, that all of these feelings that kind of surrounds so many of these feelings for us, it might feel like it's keeping us safe, but in reality there's nothing to keep us safe from, really.
I was thinking and I don't think the three of you will mind me sharing this, sounds ominous, on a very regular basis, we'll be, we speak as a 4 twice a week, sometimes more, and we're in quite a lot of communication on WhatsApp and email, non-stop in a good way. Like, this is what I've just learned, this is how I failed today, all of that stuff. And it will be fairly typical that we might spend an entire hour just doing how are you, and for all 4 of us to go around and actually say how we are and how we're feeling. And I think it would be fair to say on a quite a regular basis, one of us will cry on that call. Not always, but one of us will cry. And there comes a point, and a lot of you will know this, if you do cry or you are experiencing or expressing emotion, it ebbs and flows. So if I just cry for 5 minutes, in 5 minutes time, usually I will feel calmer or more able to tell you a bit more about how I'm feeling. And there's always a point when one of us shares in this way, if we're feeling particularly vulnerable or emotional, or some of the feelings we would class as low, that there'll be a pause. And whoever is sharing how they're feeling on the call might say, so if you've got any ideas, that would be great. And if that person doesn't say that, without even consciously having this discussion, not one of us offers anything. Whereas what this pointed to in my life is whenever somebody's upset, or if I'm upset, I'm surrounded by, or I find myself immediately in a place of going, oh, how can I help? What can I do? What do you need? And even in that, I'm then kind of judging your experience that you must need help, or that it's not okay, or that I feel in some way uncomfortable that you're sharing this emotion with me. So the first thing I realized was it's so rare, and I'm so grateful for this group, but there are not that many occasions yet in my life, and I'm looking forward to finding more, where we're actually truly saying, I feel anxious today, and I think so far it's because of this, and actually I feel quite low, and as soon as I'm able, I'm going to go and lie down. I might just look after myself. Not, I just need a good walk, and I just need to numb for a while, and I just need some fresh air, and I just need to move on. I think any sentence now that starts with I just need, I know that there's some kind of judgment going on. So that's one thing I noticed. And then I had a live example yesterday with my daughter. She's 8, and she was just a bit grumpy in the afternoon yesterday. And I found myself saying, what's the matter? How can I help? And she said, I don't know. I don't know what's wrong. So I said, well, that's also absolutely okay. Well, let's just sit. But my first response is still, how can I help? And actually, I don't think I would have got to that place in a conversation with her a year ago before having these types of conversations with you guys. It's like, I would have just looked for a solution, questioned my ability to parent, wondered if she was okay. Whereas yesterday, just, do you need anything? And if not, cool, let's just sit and kind of be grumpy with each other. Like I can relate to that. I'll sit with you and I'll watch this TV program with you. And that was amazing. So I think it's incredible to say, if somebody's struggling near you, or if you're struggling yourself, do I need comfort right now, or do I need solutions? That's a lovely quote that somebody's given us recently. And to be able to ask for what I need, or for you to be able to ask for what you need. And then when you're with somebody, and certainly in my experience, even as live as yesterday, I felt uncomfortable that my daughter was sad, but actually almost immediately I managed to move to, well, she doesn't need anything from me. There's no judgment around the feeling. Let me just sit with you. And that's really new. And seeing those kinds of things more.
I love that. And what a gift for your daughter.
Yeah.
What a gift for her at that age to know that it's okay, that she doesn't have to solve it there and then to make you feel comfortable, that she can just be with it.
How did, just out of interest, Rach, like how did she respond to that versus how she may have responded differently in the past to you trying to fix it?
Well, there was just almost an immediate acceptance across the two of us that nothing was needed. So I think, how can I help is a fair question to a child or to any human being. Like, if you're sad, if you feel sad and you're sad in front of me, I'm going to probably say, how can I help? Whereas actually, we can quickly get to, no, there's nothing, I'm just experiencing sadness. Like, there isn't a fix to that. This is just an ebb and flow of a human emotion that's part of all of it. So it was, we just settled in. Actually, I stopped, it's dropping the judgment beat. It was like, I can just sit with you then, because unless you say to me, I am in pain here, or I need a glass of water, or, you know, whatever, we just immediately accepted the situation and just watched some terrible children's TV together. But that's what she needed, you know. It's not my bag, but, you know, she's a very awesome girl to spend time with, so that's okay.
Isn't it interesting how we try and do that exact same thing to ourselves? It's like, I need to try and find a solution. And it's just, and yet from my own experience, having kind of experienced a similar thing, right, it's like when someone else tries to fix how I'm feeling, I hate it.
Unless
it's like,
you
no,
ask
I
them
just
to.
don't want to be. And yet we do still do it to others and ourselves, even though we know that actually that's often not what we want.
It's the opposite of radical acceptance. And I see this more and more, this acceptance of recognizing it and accepting, which doesn't mean that we can be, you know, happy with maybe how we're feeling, but accepting it. This is where I am. Because I think we suffer when we want the present moment to be different. It is what it is. We are feeling however we're feeling in that moment. And by dumping a pile of judgment on it is gonna probably make it hang around a bit longer, but doesn't feel very nice for us. So, you know, the words that come to mind as well are love and kindness. And, you know, last week I was having a bit of a wobble and the ladies were amazing and just put, you know, and I had asked for some, you know, some kind of pointers and asking questions and, you know, what would love do? What would be the kindest thing to do for yourself right now? And there's a Tara Brach, who I mentioned earlier. I'm just reading her latest book at the moment, which I love. Radical Compassion. Oh, what a title. Her first book was Radical Acceptance, and this is Radical Compassion. But she says, whatever we cannot embrace with love imprisons us, whatever it is. If we are at war with it, we stay in prison. And that I find so powerful, that if we can just accept, this is how I'm feeling right now, and I don't need to fix it, I don't need to shift it. Yeah, it's uncomfortable, but boy, we can do uncomfortable. Just be with it. It will leave when it's ready to leave. And that to me is such a powerful thing. And to treat myself with care as I would a friend. Or even, and I can't remember where I read this, it was even how, you know, if you feel that you can't compare yourself, you can't treat yourself the way you would a friend if you're, because you don't feel worthy of it or whatever it is. It's how you might treat a stranger. And I thought that was really interesting. A stranger who was maybe looking a bit lost, or I don't know, you treat them with kindness. And if we do that to ourselves, I feel that's, it's respect. And what about respecting all of our emotions, respecting all our feelings? That they're there for a reason. As signposts.
I love that, Rebecca. And what about, sorry, Natalie, I'm totally jumping in over you there, but this, you know, how many times has somebody said to you, cheer up?
Yeah. Yes.
It's like, I don't want to repeat what goes through my mind when you say that. And with the ladies the other day, I shared this comic strip that somebody had put on one of the social media, and it's a picture of two women, and one says to the other, "You look tired," and the other woman responds with, "You look annoying." And I just think, yes, because why are we judging what the other person looks like, or telling them to cheer up, or having any kind of judge? And just, how are you? You know, and have that conversation, and then see if the person needs anything. They might not, or if I need something, I might, you know, try and say it, but cheer up. I'm thinking, beep off. It bugs me, that one.
But there's also that, you know, when somebody asks you how you are, and what do we say? I'm fine. and I can't remember, I've written it, it's written in our book, the book that B and I've written, Recovery from Within, but it's a rock band's song. They called the song Fine, I think. And you'll have to excuse my language, but I'm repeating from somebody else here. Fine stands for fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and emotional. That's what that when we say I'm fine, it's like this pressure cooker, right? What if we say how we're feeling? Yeah, maybe the school gate might not be the right place for that.
I was going to say, you soon learn where it's okay and where it's not okay, but just to say more often, actually, I'm having a bit of a rubbish day, how are you? That's better than me just going, yeah, fine, thanks, yourself.
Yeah, you know? Because we're not listening anyway to the answer, are we?
No.
Yeah. I am going to turn on the chat.
Yeah.
So we would love, as always, to hear your comments, questions,
thoughts.
Yeah.
Natalie, did I talk over you then? I'm sorry. I definitely did.
No, you didn't talk over me at all. No, what I wanted to share was, and it all links. Like, the reason we don't say what's really going on is because there's this judgment around anything other than fine or beyond in a positive way is, you know, maybe not what we want to get into, and we don't give ourselves that compassion. And when we judge, whatever the feeling is, if we add any kind of story or judgment or wanting it to hurry along, I see true for me is that, you know, I innocently lock it in longer. It's like what we resist persists, right? Because we're just not allowing things to just move along and release. And the other thing I wanted to share, which I never used to see, but I really do now, is that our feelings also give us amazing feedback, because they are also a barometer for our state of mind in the moment. So I never really used to, if I was feeling down or low or confused or overwhelmed, I always used to look at what was going on outside of me as a way to solve the issue. And I never thought to ask, what's, you know, where's my head at? What's the quality of my thinking? Do I need to be kind to myself? What do and I see now that what I am feeling invariably has a direct link to the clarity of my experience in any moment. So you will have seen us maybe talk about the shaken up snow globe or the sand jar. You know, when we get really caught up and overwhelmed, then it's like a snow globe that's been shaken up and we can't quite see clearly. So in that place, we're not best placed to go problem solving, because there's just too much fog. It's like trying to drive with a muddy windscreen. We can't see clearly. Everything's contaminated and distorted. Everything looks urgent and problematic and stuck. Whereas if we're kind to ourselves and we let things flow and settle, then we can make sense of things more. And I see now, if I'm, you know, when I'm low, not only do I try not to judge it, but I also ask myself, well, you know, what is true with what I'm thinking, you know, and is there some stories I'm adding? Are there some judgments? What's the quality of my thinking right now? Because I think, you know, that, whereas we might innocently lock things in a little bit longer, when we start to look inward, you know, we really can see how sometimes our feelings are just amazing feedback, like the rumble strips on a motorway that tell us we've gone off track. And at all points we can be kind through that whole process.
That's been so huge for me, and I kind of liken it to like my internal smoke alarm that's going off. And I think I certainly in the past used to think that if something was making me feel really anxious or worried or stressed, then it was really important and I need to listen to it. Whereas actually it's pretty much the opposite, or it at least triggers this kind of caution sign saying, just be wary of what you're believing right now. Be wary of what's going on in your head. Like you say, don't make decisions right now. Drive slowly through that fog. And that's been so incredibly helpful for me, because so often those feelings are accompanied with this kind of sense of urgency as well. It's like, you need to do this now. This is really important. This feeling is telling you something is terribly wrong. You need to run. I was saying to the ladies just before this call that when we did our first of these events last April, I was really, really nervous before that talk. And the feelings I was experiencing were just all over the place. And I really did have that sense of urgency. I wanted to run. To be totally honest, I wanted to be anywhere but in that chair. But actually those nerves, that panic, wasn't telling me anything helpful. It wasn't actually telling me that I was totally incapable and that I was going to make a fool of myself and that nobody really wanted to listen to what I had to say. All of this stuff churning around in my head. That actually, as Rach said at the start, I could feel all that stuff, have an absolutely pounding chest, and still do what I needed to do in that moment. I think it was until that moment that I actually realized that, because so often I would run, I would make an excuse, whether it was at work, I had to do a big presentation, if I had to do a big presentation, I called in sick before to avoid doing that stuff. But actually actually shifting this understanding has been so amazingly helpful. And it's almost like what came to me the other day is that it's like our feelings are the footprints of our thoughts. So it kind of like gives us a clue, because we often feel that feeling first before we realize what's going on up here. So it kind of just gives us that clue as to what's going on upstairs, really. But yeah, that's been absolutely massive for me.
It's like it feels like it's our psychological immune system. So if we get a cut, like we have a physical immune system. So if we get a cut, then we know not to meddle with it. Like obviously we need to clean it, but over time it will heal itself, and it will actually, if we interfere with it, we'll make it worse. If we pick at it, we'll make it worse. And the more we kind of allow our psychological immune system to let us know, you know, listen to the feedback we're getting. If we're you know, distressed, we might just want to check in. What's the quality of my thinking right now? How can I be extra kind to myself? Not try and hurry it along or do something else. It's like that beach ball. It will rise to the surface. Our well-being rises to the surface if we let it.
Yeah. I think allowing, that word allow feels really important as well, because I think our tolerance levels are generally not great. So it's like, okay, well, I'll allow myself 5 minutes to feel this and then I'll shut it down. But actually just allowing the whole thing to move through us. In the book Burnout, they kind of talk about kind of traveling through this almost emotional tunnel, and we need to get out the other side. We need to allow it to travel through that tunnel in order to kind of complete this cycle. But actually often we get stuck in the middle, and that's where things kind of get a bit icky. And I'm talking about this from the perspective of someone who's suffered with chronic back pain for the last 3.5 years, and I've had on and off knee pain for the last probably about 8 years. Nothing medically wrong, but what is now been kind of brought to my attention is that that's potentially being caused by feelings and emotions and stress and tension that has not been resolved, that has not moved through me. It's got stuck. It's physically got stuck. And I haven't got to the root of what that is yet. And so that's the kind of journey I'm on at the moment. But I think it very much, I'm kind of not surprised, to be honest. Like, there was so much stuff that I've been through in the past that I'm pretty sure I've shoved away in a box somewhere. And now that beach ball is coming out and it's stabbing me in the back. and I'm just trying, I mean, this is a very live experience for me. I'm in pain a lot of the time, but I'm just trying to be really, really gentle with myself while I'm going through this process, because I know it's going to bring up stuff that I've clearly buried from the past, and just kind of almost preparing myself to feel it all, whatever comes up. And I'm talking this all through with professionals. And I'm not, I see that as a very healthy thing to do, because if we're not allowing ourselves to feel stuff as we go, as I said earlier, it's either gonna, as I said, smack us in the face or get trapped somewhere, and that can lead to all sorts of things. There's a condition called TMS, which stands for tension myoneural syndrome, which is essentially what I've just described, as sort of trapped, unresolved feeling, tension, stress that hasn't moved through us, and it can wreak havoc, really, cause anything from back pain to heart palpitations to stomach ulcers, all sorts of stuff like that. So it's like very real physical manifestations. And this isn't to kind of freak you all out, by the way, but I just wanted to share that this is kind of what I'm going through right now. And which, I mean, we keep repeating this, that we're very much learning as we go. And I really am too. But I think it's been quite a wake-up call for me, because I've been, I mean, the number of different health professionals, scans, all sorts that I've had for my back, has been enormous. So actually this has been an amazing kind of realization that actually this is what's most likely what is going on, and how like incredible the mind body connection is, that it can actually do that, that it's causing this pain, trying to kind of alert me to something that's going on. But yeah, my quest continues. I just wanted to share that because it may be relevant to others watching this. Yeah,
it's so, I mean, it's amazing, and I am so incredibly in awe of what you're doing, Bea, just to, you know, in exploring this and having to, you know, having come across this now, the TMS thing, and because it kind of makes sense, right? You've had the all clear from every possible other diagnosis, but you know that, and we've had conversations where you'll talk about something that you then suddenly feel your back go into spasm because it's something that you're thinking and feeling. I was absolutely the same when I was going through my divorce. I had chronic sciatica down my right leg. And that was because my tension, I'd clench because it's just how I kind of process. My shoulders are up here. And I'm sure it was, you know, with the results of your, when you were ill as well with anorexia, all of that, my tension, because I couldn't express my feelings. I didn't know how to, or again, it's like, oh, calm down, you know, stop making such fuss. That we pack it all away, right? And that
or just soldier on.
Or yeah, I'll soldier on. Yeah, carrying the weight of the world on our shoulders. These idioms are there for a reason. You know, they explain what we're going through, and the expression of our emotions is vital. It's not optional, it's vital.
You know, I'm just thinking the amount of coaching conversations I have, and you know, just because something will get touched on, the client might cry, and it's a really normal, you know, normal thing, and it's really okay. But there's so much apologizing. Oh, I'm so sorry. Please apologize. You know, that people forever apologizing and excusing the fact that they get an emotion on. You know, I always say, everything's welcome, and if you feel like you're crying, chances are you probably need to. That's the best thing you can do. I've set homework to cry before. Yeah, because it's just not healthy to keep holding it in, because what we're doing in that, we're innocently making pain stick around longer. We're locking in the suffering that, left to its own devices, would move through, and that also has an opportunity to touch us and tell us something we might need to know.
What for you ladies, not to put you on the spot or anything, what for you ladies has been the most positive impact of kind of realizing everything that we've been talking about for the last hour? I am literally putting them all on the spot. This is not rehearsed.
Well, the thing that comes up for me is that late last year, I lost my stepmom, which was obviously hugely painful and sad. And there was something about the allowing that enabled me to feel all of that without judgment. And because I just allowed and let it flow through when it needed to, I think it feels like it's been a really and I'm not saying it's kind of over yet, but it's felt a very healthy grieving process. And you know, it's incredibly sad, but also beautiful in the sense that, you know, all the love that came out as well as the pain. So that's what cropped to mind when you asked that question, B, as a real immediate, what I see as an impact in my life. And I think because of that, I was able to, you know, grieve in a way that my daughter watched a process that was, you know, felt healthy, and she was involved in that too. Yeah. What about you guys?
I'd say the same, actually. When my mum died almost 2 years ago now, gosh, it will be at the end of this month, it'll be 2 years. And how very different an experience that might have been in the past. And again, the fear of losing her. I mean, she died of dementia, so she'd been dying for a long time. We'd been losing her for a long time. But actually I was able to, and I'm blessed that I was with her when she died, with my dad and B's younger brother. And to actually be present, I think there's something here about, with our emotions, is being present to what we are feeling. That I didn't fear my emotions, which, you know, is what I said at the start of this hour, was that's what I was frightened of. I was fearful of my emotions. So actually, I was not fearful, and I was able to sit there and allow whatever came up, you know, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because in her dying, we were also then laughing with some of the care home staff, the nurses and support staff there. And then I'd be back crying again. And then it was, you know, having to be kind of neutral in a very practical way to get all the practical stuff done. And then laughing again and remembering and sort of just dipping in and out of whatever I was feeling, that it was, all of it was okay. All of it was okay. And I think that's something that I've learnt, and I hope passed on to clients as well, is that all of our emotions are valid. There's nothing that's, sure, we've got preferences, you know, but actually all of them are valid and all of them are important.
What are you, Rich?
I think that many people, and I share also, but many people tell me how they're feeling on a regular basis, really honestly, openly tell me. And what's been very special about the last year, or probably since just, you know, and there are others on this call I speak to on a regular basis, you know who you are, like being open to this, learning about the human experience. I think whenever somebody presents something, and it can be anything from, I feel humiliated, I feel shame, I feel pain, there'll be context around that, there'll be detail around that, but my gut response is like, yeah. And that's, you know, there's, I don't jump to how can I help, what can we do, which now just feels more judgmental than it has felt before. But just this year, I can't relate. I might not have felt the same way, but I just relate to the fact that you're experiencing all kinds of things, and that's totally okay. And just the permission, I think, for the other person, you know, if I come back with a, oh, you know, even a small, oh gosh, that sounds awful, or oh, how can I help? This face that kind of comes with concern, or discomfort that I'm having, that you're not okay, that's gone. So I wonder what impact that has on the other person who may not have given themselves permission before to go, there was no, it's okay for me to feel this way. Other people feel this way, and I can take the time to feel that.
What about you, Lee?
Yeah, what about you, Pete?
I think like what comes to mind for me is that it's really, I really feel like I've been able to embrace vulnerability over the last, even just the last kind of year or so, because I think showing your emotions involves a bit of vulnerability. I think that's one of the fears that we all have, or a lot of us have. I don't want people to see me cry. I don't want people to see me as weak for crying, for being upset, for whatever, because they'll think I can't cope, all of that stuff. And I think I've just been able to see that that's such a unhelpful way of living, that it's understandable, totally understandable, but I guess I've started to kind of see through that. And actually, I was saying on one of our calls the other day that I kind of see vulnerability as one of my superpowers now. I was getting really nervous about doing something the other week, and then I suddenly just realized, I can just be vulnerable. I can just show up with all my emotions, with all my feelings, and be okay. I can be nervous, I can be terrified, and I can still be okay. And I think that's been massive. And I think when we do that, we also give permission to other people to show up in that way, in that kind of authentic, maskless way. It's like I left the job that I was in for quite a number of years, not that long ago, and we had a kind of virtual leaving do, and I sobbed the entire time in front of like a lot of people and a lot of senior people, not that matters, but and it was amazing, and it was beautiful, and it was sad and heartbreaking and beautiful. And then other people started to cry, and it was just this kind of beautiful mess. And I think we can miss so much joy by not allowing ourselves or other people to show up with all of our emotions, because there's so much beauty and joy to be had in all of that. So I feel like that's got to be a positive, right?
I'm just thinking, B, on our Recovery from Within YouTube channel, you posted a video recently, Why I Love to Cry.
Oh, love to cry. Crying is the best.
Which you never would have said before.
Yeah, and if there's an audience, even better.
Well, ladies, we are at the hour, but that just seems like such a great place, I suppose, as a wrap up. And I love what B said there about beautiful mess, because that seems to sum it up somehow.
Yeah.
Whatever we're feeling, it's all perfect. Yeah. Nothing's broken. We're never lacking. We're meant to feel it all. And the more we can allow, then, we get a chance to enjoy the ride, and not judge it for whether it's high or low. but to experience the highs and embrace them, and experience the lows with more grace and less fear. So thank you so much for tuning in with us. It's a joy as always. Our next day, if you want to save it in your diary, is the 7th of July. And we have yet to decide on our topic. So if you want to get in touch with us, please use our email, 4women4decades@gmail.com. Have I got that right, ladies?
Right.
Because we'd love to hear any suggestions you have, or feel free to comment on the Facebook group as well. So thank you very much, and till the next time, take care.